This is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by West Virginia University, offering education, healthcare, and the opportunity to achieve career success since 1867. Information at wvu.edu. Embassy Suites by Hilton Charleston, an all-suite hotel and conference center minutes from Yeager Airport and Capital Market. Reservations and brasserie dining information available at hilton.com.
Solar Holler, supporting Appalachian communities and building on West Virginia's history of powering the nation by bringing solar energy and battery backup to homeowners, nonprofits, and businesses throughout the region. More at solarholler.com.
Welcome to the Legislature Today. I'm Brianna Heaney. Tuesday, the State Senate Economic Development Committee advanced a bill that would allow carbon storage in deep underground wells beneath state parks. The panel approved Senate Bill 627 on a voice vote. It now moves to the full Senate. In 2024, the Federation of Humane Organizations of West Virginia estimated that the state had more than 118,000 stray cats. More advocates say spaying and neutering pets is a key to reducing pet overpopulation. But spay and neuter procedures can be costly, which is why the state has stepped in to help finance them. This session, Jack Walker reports that lawmakers are looking to strengthen spay and neuter access once again.
The Berkeley County Humane Society houses dozens of adoptable cats and dogs on the outskirts of Martinsburg. Brandy Bender is one of the shelter's managers.
So this shelter's actually been right here on this hill since 1940. We intake owner surrenders here. So people who are moving or can't afford them, they surrender them here. Even if they need medical needs, we get them the medical help they need because we have the vet office right next door, which is great. And then we place them up for adoption and find them homes.
Helping cats and dogs get adopted is important to Bender, but she would also like to see fewer animals pass through her shelter's doors. She sees increasing spay and neuter procedures as a first step toward reducing capacity issues and improving the quality of life for cats and dogs.
So by getting them fixed, not like I said, not only the health reasons for getting them fixed, they don't continue to have babies, and then those babies have babies, and there's just not enough homes for all of them, and then they end up in the shelters, and not just our shelter, I'm talking everywhere. So by getting your one dog fixed, you could be saving hundreds of animals down the line.
Animal shelters generally receive some level of state or county funding, which means greater need could require more public funds. In recent years, the West Virginia legislature has moved to expand access to spay and neuter procedures to reduce the strain on shelters. In 2017, the legislature created the West Virginia Spay-Neuter Assistance Program, run by the West Virginia Department of Agriculture. The program grants nonprofits and local governments money to subsidize spay and neuter procedures for pets, adoptable animals, and even strays. Program manager Andrew Yost says the program's impact is sizable.
To date, we have done roughly 70,000 procedures. And in the last 2 years, we've averaged roughly 18,000.
The Berkeley County Humane Society has participated in that program. Bender said state aid has been a huge benefit.
It helps people immensely. As soon as we post that the grant is open, our doors flood. People come in and fill out the application to go through it because, it's anywhere between $600 to $900 to have an animal fixed these days.
The program isn't funded by taxes, but instead by registration fees that pet food manufacturers must pay to sell their products in the state. But it was launched on a provisional basis, and the program is slated to end in 2027.
When the funding bill sunsets, that means our funding will go away, and therefore the program will have no teeth.
But pet advocates across the state have been pushing for a renewal of spay and neuter grant funding, and some lawmakers have brought those concerns to Charleston. We're here outside the state capitol, where lawmakers in both the West Virginia House of Delegates and the West Virginia Senate are considering legislation that would expand access to spay and neuter programs for residents of West Virginia. Both bills would remove the expiration date on the state's spay and neuter program. That includes House Bill 2158, sponsored by Delegate Doug Smith, a Republican from Mercer County. That bill passed the House Wednesday. It also includes Senate Bill 578, sponsored by Senator Amy Grady, a Republican from Mason County.
So anything we can do to make it easier to be a pet owner, because I have pets, and they're not just pets, right? They're our family, furry family, and so it's really important just to make sure that people feel comfortable and feel like they can do what they need to for their pet.
That bill is still awaiting review from the Senate Agriculture Committee. Meanwhile, other lawmakers are exploring expansions to spay and neuter access in the state beyond the current grant program. That includes Delegate Elliott Pritt, a Republican from Fayette County. He proposed House Bill 2505, which would create a tax credit to subsidize spay and neuter costs for residents. The bill would remove the cost of the procedure from a resident's annual personal income tax, with proof of payment from a licensed veterinarian.
It's important because it affects not only the safety of the animals, right? There's public safety too, health when it comes to stray dogs, proliferating disease, cats as well. People's property rights, if you have a lot of feral cats or dogs in a neighborhood, they could destroy personal property. It affects property values.
The bill was inspired by shelter capacity difficulties in Fayette County. Pritt says he and local animal shelter staff see spay and neuter as a solution to pet overpopulation. His bill currently awaits committee review. Grady says she feels relatively confident that supporting the state's spay and neuter programs can find traction in both the House and Senate this session.
I don't foresee it being an issue. But that, I guess I'll find that out when we start discussing it a little bit more. But it should be pretty easy to get across.
And that's something folks like Bender are excited about.
Spay or neuter is the biggest thing. When it comes to an animal shelter, I think that's probably the biggest thing we preach is spay and neuter.
For the Legislature Today, I'm Jack Walker at the state capitol.
The House of Delegates is considering a bill that changes the law on illegal drugs that contain fentanyl. I attended the House floor session and have that story. Currently, a person who is charged with distributing illegal drugs can get an enhanced sentence if the drugs contain fentanyl and they distributed the drugs knowing they contained fentanyl. Delegate James Akers, a Republican from Kanawha County, said that it's nearly impossible to prove in the court system that a person knew a drug had fentanyl.
There's under current code a knowing finding that the individual knew that the fentanyl was present in the drug, which is virtually a legal impossibility.
He's the lead sponsor for House Bill 2437. The bill would change the current code so that if a person distributed a drug with fentanyl in it, whether they did so knowingly or not, they could face a longer sentence. Delegate Hollis Lewis, a Democrat from Kanawha County, said the bill could be punishing individuals who suffer with substance abuse and are caught up in the cycle of addiction, instead of addressing the root causes of addiction in the state.
The problem is that when we talk specifically about pills, we talk about Xanax, Oxycontin, and those things, we're not, by and large, you're not having individuals, in their closet making these pills. These pills are coming from Mexico and they're being transported here. And then a lot of people are suffering because they think they're buying one thing but getting another thing. And I want us to remember the origins of this problem. I want us to remember that, because when we think of addicts, too often we think of somebody who's just on the street trying to feed a problem. The origins of this problem came with somebody who broke an ankle, who hurt their back, and they went to their doctor and they got these pills. And then they couldn't get the pills anymore, and then they had to turn to the street. So either we're gonna adequately address the problem, or we're just gonna continue to put a Band-Aid on it. Thank you, sir.
Akers pointed out that drugs can be tested with fentanyl test strips, which the legislature and governor legalized last year.
It's an illegal substance that you then intend to sell. You are now authorized by law to possess drug testing strips as well to see if the drug or the illegal substance that you possess contains fentanyl before you sell it. That's free and available to anyone who decides they want to engage in this misconduct.
The bill passed 91-7 with some bipartisan support. It now heads to the Senate. Across the Capitol, a bill that would ban foods that contain certain ingredients cleared the Senate and is very close to completing legislation. The bill would make West Virginia the first state in the U.S. to have such an expansive ban on these ingredients. House Bill 2354 bans foods that contain a series of ingredients, including blue number 1, blue number 2, green number 3, red number 3, red number 40, yellow number 5, and yellow number 6. The bill originates from the House of Delegates, which passed it last week 93-5. The no votes were all Republicans. The bill landed on the House floor last Monday, and since legislators in both chambers have shared personal stories about the effects of food dyes on themselves and their families. Senator Laura Chapman, a Republican from Ohio County and the Senate Health Committee chair, said the bill is probably the single most important bill that senators will vote on in their career.
Remember this day, because this will be the start of making our state and our children healthier. This bill, if signed into law, will put us at the forefront of food safety in West Virginia.
Senator Jason Barrett, a Republican from Berkeley County, said that West Virginia consumers deserve the same level of protections as consumers in other countries, where some of these ingredients are banned or require labels for.
And other countries, the EU, the UK, and Canada, where bans or warning label requirements are in place. In fact, Mountain Dew in the UK is colored with beta-carotene. In the United States, it's colored with yellow number 5. So I'd ask my colleagues to ask yourself this question. Do the children and families in Milan deserve safer food than those in Martinsburg? Do those in London deserve safer food than those in Logan? Or do those in Paris deserve better than those in Parkersburg?
Senator Eric Tarr, a Republican from Putnam County, was one of 2 no votes in the Senate.
And I'm worried about the precedent that we set in West Virginia, with coming in and just arbitrarily going through without going through a study with us here at home on these chemicals, on anything we have with the food additives, because we can take this path with refined sugar too. There's study after study after study that shows refined sugar could cause cancer, that it contributes to diabetes and obesity. You can go right down the line.
He said with West Virginia being the home of many food manufacturers, he's not sure this will be good for the state's business economy. The bill passed the Senate 31-2. A small amendment that changed the year the bill goes into effect from 2027 to 2028 means that the bill will have to go back to the House, where delegates can either concur or reject the change. If they concur, it will head directly to the governor's desk. Earlier today, Curtis Tate spoke with Delegate Evan Hansen, a Monongalia County Democrat, and Delegate George Street, a Preston County Republican, about energy issues in West Virginia. Among other topics, they discussed rising electricity prices, community solar, and data centers.
I have Delegate Evan Hansen and Delegate George Street. Both are on energy-related committees in the House. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us here.
Pardon?
Thanks for having us on.
Oh,
yes.
It is a little noisy in here because we have quite the event going on today. But so bear with us on that. So Delegate Hansen, I want to first ask you about electricity rates in West Virginia. You expressed the other day that they're too high, and that you plan to introduce a bill to help mitigate that. Can you tell us more?
This is one of the issues we hear about most from our constituents, and it's not surprising because the residential electricity rates in West Virginia have gone up faster than any other state in the country over the last 10, 15 years. And the reason for that is some, in my opinion, bad policies that this legislature has passed and some decisions I don't agree with from the Public Service Commission. So we have a few different bills that would address that.
What would the bill focusing on the PSC do?
Well, there's 2 PSC bills. The first would institute a rate freeze until 2016. So that would allow us time to take a pause in these increases that keep coming so that we could pass some good policy
and this would be
the
statewide?
Legislature. This would be a statewide freeze
for
of electric rates.
First Energy customers and Appalachian Power customers.
That's right, statewide. But then in terms of the Public Service Commission, the bill does 2 things. It defines the public interest so that it's going to be more clear when the commission makes decisions that they're actually doing so for the public interest and not for the utilities themselves and their shareholders. And number 2, it includes a set of ethics reforms that apply to the commissioners themselves, again, to hopefully make them more responsive to the people.
Delegate Street, your county, Preston County, is also in First Energy and Mon Power service territory, I believe.
That's right.
What have you heard from your constituents about this issue, about the price of electricity?
It is something that I have heard a little about. Honestly, most of the complaints have been from that I've heard about have been from AEP's territory. Their rates are slightly higher due to the population has kind of gone down a little more in the southern part of the state versus the northern part. So, it's kind of a distribution of per kilowatt per person, economy of scale type of thing. So, but I have heard some complaints, and obviously no one likes to hear about increased prices on anything.
Well, are you receptive to taking a look at what Delegate Hansen has proposed?
Sure. I mean, I'm always willing to look at anything that's a good idea. We need all the good ideas we can get.
Well, another thing that you've done, Delegate Hansen, is reintroduced your bill to enable community solar, which currently isn't enabled in West Virginia as it is in many other states, actually. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is? Just a quick summary of what that is, and where you see it going.
The reason we need a community solar bill is because West Virginia is the outlier state among all 50 states in terms of where we get our electricity. It's about 90% from coal, and as much as I love our coal miners and want to support them, it's that over-reliance on a single source of electricity that's caused our rates to go up so much. So what we really need is an all-the-above energy strategy that includes solar and renewables in addition to fossil fuels. And that's what the community solar bill does, is it enables one type of solar development, community solar, to be built in West Virginia. The testimony that we received on that bill is that if community solar were allowed, there'd be tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of investments in new solar projects in West Virginia that would lower electric rates and create jobs.
Delegate Street, does that sound reasonable to you?
I do agree that there's nothing wrong with having more energy options and some energy diversification, and I believe that there's a lot of kind of like the signals are coming that we're going to start seeing a lot more gas-fired electric generation. It takes a few years to build all that. There's 2 plants, I believe, under construction now, and I'm hearing about more that coming over the next few years. With AI and data centers and all this that we're hearing, it seems to me that the whole PJM grid is going to need more power total, regardless of the source. And anything we can do to increase that is a good thing, especially if we can do it. You're part of the PJM grid, but if we can do more of it in West Virginia, that's more jobs here, and depending on the source, more severance taxes here. So I'm all for that. The one caution I want us to keep in mind, specifically as it goes to solar, is let's keep in mind about base load versus intermittent. And I know that the argument usually is that, well, we're nowhere near that limit. We're at a very small percentage, 1 to 3%, something like that, of renewables versus base load, like from coal, for example. And we have a small amount of hydro here. So I'm not saying that we're at a limit in West Virginia right now that we're going to lose control of our base load, but it's just something to keep an eye on.
Well, for example, the other day, an executive from Appalachian Power came to testify in the Senate, and what he said with respect to data center, or what he referred to as a large load customer, is that if one were to come into their service territory in West Virginia, they'd probably have to add capacity. It didn't sound like that would mean necessarily burning more coal or adding new coal assets. What do you think are the most realistic possibilities for capacity that could power a data center or support AI?
I think the most likely thing to happen, and you know, there's two parts to this, so I'll have a quick follow-up. The most likely thing to happen to add the largest amount of new power to the grid for, just we'll use the example of a data center, it would probably be fed by gas, is my guess. Okay. Now the second part to that is some companies coming in and that have already come in or in the future want a certain power mix. They want, you know, a certain percentage of a renewable, for example, versus fossil fuel. We have no nuclear at this time in the state. That could be another conversation. That takes many years to build. But so to answer your question, I think some could be solar because if that's what the client wants, the customer wants, then we have to be cognizant of that and try to accommodate them. But I think it's very likely for the largest amount of power to be filled the quickest through gas.
Delegate Hansen, what do you think?
I think you don't hear a lot about climate change in this legislature, despite the fact that a lot of the bills that we're discussing have big impacts one way or the other. And to Delegate Street's point, there are a lot of people across the country that care about climate change and are demanding renewable energy to power things like data centers. So I would agree with the delegate that there is demand for renewables and that's going to drive some of the renewable development in West Virginia if we make good decisions to allow that to happen. Will it all be renewables? Probably not. There probably will be some gas development, like the delegate said. I would agree with that.
But on nuclear?
Well, there could be nuclear, but I agree with the delegate that that's probably a decade off, so that's not a short-term solution.
Well, what about battery storage? Like what Forum Energy is building up in Weirton?
Well, that's exactly right, and you don't hear enough about that in this legislature. If you pair solar with battery storage, it will be able to behave a little bit more like baseload power than intermittent power. And the batteries are getting cheaper and cheaper. They're able to discharge for longer and longer periods of time, and Forum Energy is a really good example of that. Those are batteries being built right here in West Virginia.
Well, Delegate Street, let me follow up on the data center question. Do you know of any specific proposals, any specific companies that kind of look to drop anchor here in the state?
I've heard a lot of talk. That's really, I can't really be more specific than that. And I've heard talk from various different companies. A lot of them are private entities looking to have their own kind of off-grid, microgrid, their own island, so to speak, create their own power, get a data center to come here from whatever company, pick any of the top 5, and provide that all in one location. All co-located is a term used a lot.
Right.
So, but to name a specific company, I don't want to name one because it's still talk. You know, I don't know of any contracts that have been signed.
Okay. Well, but in terms of location, though, the governor in his State of the State address, I forget the exact phrasing, something like a throwdown with neighboring states. Both of your counties border on Pennsylvania. I think yours on Maryland as well. I mean, what would it take from a state policy perspective to get something like that on this side of our border?
Well, I mean, I think it's coming. It's on its way. What exactly we need to do to further, lack of a better term, bait them in here, I don't really know, and I want to be cautious with that because I don't want us to give away too much. I don't want us to give away the store. You know, we're West Virginia, if our land is going to be used and our power and our water, you know, data centers use a lot of water for storage, some instances. We need to be careful. Do I want their business? Absolutely. But I think we need to approach this carefully, take a close look at what other states have done, what tax breaks they've given or not, what power rate deals they've worked out or not, and kind of let's do some comparison. Let's not just give it all away.
Delegate Hansen, about 30 seconds.
Similar, I think we need to be cautious. We need to make sure that if we're building new power in West Virginia, that the costs are borne by the data centers and not by the residents of West Virginia. But it's also a real opportunity, because if they're demanding renewable energy and will help develop those solar fields, that could mean thousands of jobs for West Virginians.
All right, well, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That was Delegate Evan Hansen and Delegate George Street speaking with Curtis Tate about energy issues. That's it for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Catch the Legislature Today Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. And remember, West Virginia Public Broadcasting covers the session daily in our radio news program, West Virginia Morning, and on our news site at wvpublic.org. We also broadcast the daily floor session of both the House and the Senate on the West Virginia channel. I'm Brianna Heaney. Good evening, and I'll see you here again tomorrow.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by West Virginia University, offering education, healthcare, and the opportunity to achieve career success since 1867. Information at wvu.edu. Embassy Suites by Hilton Charleston, an all-suite hotel and conference center minutes from Yeager Airport and Capital Market. Reservations and brasserie dining information available at hilton.com.
Solar Holler, supporting Appalachian communities and building on West Virginia's history of powering the nation by bringing solar energy and battery backup to homeowners, nonprofits, and businesses throughout the region. More at solarholler.com.